This is my second talk with Ellen Reynolds, my awesome professor of film and video from Penn, who really believed in me, still believes in me, and I am still a big fan of her. In fact, I want to give her a big shout out because we're about to talk about documentaries and teaching methodology. And to prepare for it, I watched some of the documentaries that she recommended. Especially, there was one that not just caught my attention span, but taught me that, wow, I can still sit through 2 hours of a movie, especially a documentary, which isn't always action, 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 action. So, Ellen, thank you so much for joining me again.
Pleased to be here, Jerry.
One of the things that I've been talking about with a lot of the people I've been interviewing is how to learn, how to have fun learning, but also build practical skills. And that's something I kind of almost took for granted in learning film because I was already very interested. I didn't just take it for credit. I really was interested in cinema since a young age, but also your classes, especially, taught actual skills. Oh, what are these things you can do to edit? What are these things you can do to film? How do you frame stuff? So you were already building both our love and our practical skills. And sort of, I realized I can apply this to other things. You can love the learning, but also learn something practical. So that's kind of what I've been applying to everything. And I realized no matter what I do in life, I'm going to embrace both aspects of it. So,
Mhm.
how has your teaching methodology, how has your approach to mentoring, guiding students changed all these years, if it has at all?
A lot of it was influenced by the way that I learned. And I was so fortunate to have my first video professor make it really safe to make mistakes.
Mhm.
I don't think it's healthy in a classroom to be really judgmental about everything that a student brings in because that can make them feel, you know, self-conscious or worried. And so I do like to create an atmosphere of safety, number one, but also with rigor, not like anything goes, but to give constructive criticism while being supportive. So I would say like the atmosphere in the classroom is important. So that comes first. I do try to balance showing examples of work with, as you said, teaching practical skills. And I think that's really important, especially maybe in these more recent years where people are more like creating content rather than, I don't know, I don't mean to be dismissive, but maybe the more a serious approach or artistic approach so I understand content. I watch content too, very, very short form, right? But I do still want to teach practice that will allow someone to grow as an artist, and really, really be rigorous because, especially in documentary, I think the learning never stops. And so, even for me, I would say I'm still in the learning process. Once you have the technical skills, the idea is to put them in the background. It's not a conscious thing so much anymore. You know how to use your equipment, you understand the principles, let's say, of composition, and it starts to flow naturally. And then you can be thinking more about, your story and everything. So I think practicing the skills is super important. And I would never, ever underestimate the importance of skill building, whether it's in shooting or editing.
Yeah. One thing to really support your point is both in video two that I took from your class and from documentary video. I remember that strong bond because all of us really cared, right? Video one, I think a lot of people take it because it's fun. Oh, it got good. But video two, it's like, oh, you want to be more serious about it. So video two and documentary video. And in fact, a few of us were in the same class. So
Mhm,
it really built this like brotherhood slash sisterhood slash
mhm,
camaraderie.
mhm.
And so like when we workshopped, it wasn't just like some of the other classes, you say, oh, you okay, you're judging each other's work, but like it really felt like we really wanted each other to get better. And
Yeah.
I think that is one of the fundamental things that is essential a lot in the film industry. Like if you really want to work on a set or work even in an indie production, just help your friend. Like you have to really both be passionate about each other's projects. And you were very good at building that. You were very good at building that with the people in class.
And those relationships can last a lifetime, you know, and really films aren't made usually by one person alone. And so, and even if you are shooting and editing alone, you want to be able to give it, you know, some eyes on it, people that you trust and people that you know want you to do well. So I think that building those relationships is very important.
If you remember from video 2, I will always remember first exercise from video 2 was A to B. And then second exercise was parallel editing. And then third exercise was
I should
either
remember this.
this match cut or hook. Hook might have been number 4. But match cut might have been, but actually match cut's kind of like parallel editing. So this I'm like sort of forgetting, but like, how did you come up with that kind of progression of things?
They're the things that are most likely to go wrong, you know,
Mhm.
and it is a skill, it is a technique. Take a match cut, for example. There's different ways of matching a cut, like an action match, for instance, right? Where I throw the ball in one shot, and then in the next shot, somebody completely different in a completely different place is catching that ball. Okay. But the ball has to flow continuously out of one shot into the next. Like the arc has to be, you know, the right arc. And so even something as simple as that, like throw a ball and then have somebody else catch it and edit it so that the ball seems to be going continuously. That's an action match because the ball's in action, right? I do a lot of exercises with steps at that stage too. I don't know if I did that in your class. Climbing steps, descending steps.
Oh, we didn't do that. That might have been video 1.
I did that at U Arts.
Mm.
Maybe I started it then, but and when steps, there's multiple, staircases. How to turn a corner.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And how to catch somebody coming up so that it all seems to be happening in natural time, but you've shot it multiple times. And so how to make that action, still an action match, how to make it, continue. So they're tricky little things because as you'll remember, if you even miss it by one frame, you can tell. So that's 1/30th of a second or 1/24th of a second. So it also underscores, wow, every frame counts. And so it also goes to like shooting fat, so-called, shooting extra. So you have some wiggle room as to where to make that edit and match it up. So something as simple as that, like a match cut, there's all these embedded things that are so important. So I would say that the way I came up with the exercises and the order in which I presented them was, here's a skill that can be overlooked, which is really important. Let's just practice that tiny thing, right? A to B is getting a character from one place to another, right? Not that simple, really, because in most films, you're condensing time. So the actual time it takes to get from A to B is somehow condensed for the film. How do you replicate the feeling and the action of moving from place to place, but do it in less time? It sounds like a small thing. It's an important thing, and it's not all that easy. So I think once you get like these little techniques, then okay, then you can start to incorporate that into whatever it is that you're making. I guess also the way that I came up with the exercises was, how did I learn? Once again, like what was the most important thing for me to learn? And how did I learn it? So that you don't have to learn it all on your own, like I did pretty much, but to give you some things that I know are useful.
Very enlightening, and it makes sense because it goes back to what you first said about how you got to give it a good space for people to take risks and feel comfortable making mistakes. So
Mhm,
how do we get them to feel comfortable making mistakes? Let's teach the things and practice the things that people make mistakes a lot on.
mhm,
So that makes a lot of sense.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, wow. When you are watching movies, do you ever sort of, as you see something cool, you write it down, you're like, I gotta show this to my class, or is your curriculum kind of, it's been developed for a while?
Well, sometimes I'll look at a film and I'll think like, oh, this is such a good and unusual example of this. Like the approach or the skill level or the result just seems to be such a good example that then I will note it and maybe incorporate it into the curriculum. But then sometimes it works the backwards way. Like I know what film I've assigned, and then I'll watch it repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly to find those moments that are, the best ones to really pull out in class. So I'm not actually teaching documentary production where I'm currently teaching, which is at Thomas Jefferson University. I'm teaching world cinemas, films from all over the world. And so that has a different objective where I'm trying to get to something real about the place in which it's made that really represents that place and the makers in that place. This semester, I'm connecting issues in that place that really are important, that we have similar issues here, and to see maybe how is their perspective slightly different than the way that we look at that thing. So I think that that's been really, really useful too, like just to have a broad concept of what is it that I'm trying to get to? Oh, the world is a big place. How do I make it manageable? Well, what's important? And there'll just be contemporary issues like immigration. A lot of people are talking about immigration, right, in our country. It's a big topic. Well, that's also happening elsewhere in the world. So the film that I selected to show about immigration, which we just got finished, is a film called Atlantics by Madi Diop from Senegal. And it's a very poetic film. It's on Netflix. It's a beautiful film. But it approaches the topic of immigration in a way that we in the United States don't typically do. We rely a lot on the sensationalism of it, the drama of like so many people are coming in and so many people are getting thrown out. A lot of statistics and a lot of looking at immigrants as a group, not as individuals. And almost like from an us and them perspective too. So Atlantics actually, many, many young men leave the coast of Senegal to go to Europe in the thousands every year. And I think the statistic is 25% of them drown along the way because they go in these little boats. And the Atlantic, that course in the Atlantic, usually they go to the Canary Islands and then on up to Spain, but it's the most dangerous sea travel in the world. And, they're overcrowded, little rickety boats. It's just terrible. And they go out of desperation, of course. So the film is about not the perilous journey itself. At the very beginning, it sets the stage of why are these young men willing to take this risk? And it sets it up in a very, in an understandable way. They're not just going because, oh, I want to be rich or something like that. They're going for survival, because there's injustice in their country. And a lot of that is induced by the original colonizers and the continuous extraction of, natural resources and labor. So they are trying to deal with that the best they can, but it's such an exploitative system that they often have to leave. So at the beginning, it sets that up. But then the whole rest of the film is about the women that are left behind and their experience, because we never think about that either.
Yeah, we don't.
And so, I don't know, I just love the film. And it was illuminating for a lot of the students that, have been just relying on whatever news reports they happen to see. The news is so superficial. The beauty of documentary is that it can make things very personal and really focus on the individual and create that compassion and understanding for what people are going through. So I think it's important. So that's how I'm doing this World Cinemas class. I shared with you a list of documentary films that I really admire, and they do span different approaches to documentary. So I guess that's something I also think about too, because there are so many approaches to documentary. It's not just one thing. And usually when people think of documentaries, number one, they think, oh, boring. But a lot of times they think like they're didactic. They're trying to teach you some facts about a thing, you know? And even if it's enjoyable to watch, you know, it's just like you're absorbing information. And that is a type of documentary and they can be very useful, but there's so many other approaches. And so I try to select documentaries that, you know, will reflect different approaches.
Yeah. And while we're on that list of documentaries,
Mm,
two documentaries that I think reflect a almost verite type approach,
yes.
but also you can tell there's an underlying message, but it's not fully explicitly explained. But you can, if you think about it, you can kind of get
Yeah.
it, right? One, and there, that's why I understand now why you put them next to each other. Streetwise and Jesus Camp, I think
Mm,
both take that approach. Like there's no narration, there's
mm,
just interviews, and there's
mm.
just what's happening on the ground. And both of them, I think, have points built into them. Some people can interpret one way or another, but I think the majority of people will interpret it one way. And both of them are so poignant, like Streetwise and Jesus Camp. Now I know why you put those two together. And I've seen both of them. I saw Jesus Camp either in your class or in another class. And then I saw Streetwise this past weekend, and it was so deeply touching and saddening. Wow.
It is amazing. And the bar is pretty high for ethics in a documentary that is verite like that, because you are coming into somebody else's world and you're representing them and their world on the screen, and you're the conduit for it, right? So if you have an agenda and you're trying to catch them in gotcha moments or edit it just to show a certain angle on it, that's not ethical. You know, the standards for ethics are very, very high in verite because you have to really want to be honest and hopefully create a compassionate and respectful relationship. I don't know if everyone's aware of what Jesus Camp is, but these are fundamentalist Christians who send their children to camps where the whole thing is about Christianity on steroids, right? And the makers have their own opinions about it, but I think if you watch the film, you'll see that they're respectful of the people in the film, you know, and otherwise they would not get the honesty from the subjects that they do get because the subjects clearly trust them. In Streetwise, and again, for people that don't know, this is about homeless children in Seattle who have formed like their own community of support. So Martin Bell and Mary Ellen Mark. Mary Ellen Mark is a photographer. She's passed away, but an incredible photographer and does a lot of portraiture and a lot of social commentary in her portraiture. And her husband is Martin Bell, who's a filmmaker. So she went to Seattle and shot photos first of those kids, and they're really compelling. And then through that, and she's a very, very caring person, or was, I should say. She actually was in residence at the Annenberg School at Penn when I was,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Well, she graduated from the Annenberg School, and that's why she was there. But oh, it was immediately evident how she got the portraits that she got because she's such a caring person, and people will open up themselves to her. So she got these incredible portraits of these kids. And then she and her husband decided to go back to Seattle to the same kids, and this time shoot film. They spent, I don't know how long, but I want to say a couple years making that film, and got so close to the children. I guess the main character, if you can say there's a main character, is that girl called Tiny. They stayed close to her through decades and were very, you know, supportive in a practical sense for her too. So I think making verite film, you have to not so-called run and gun. You know the phrase, run in and shoot and run out, because that's news gathering, right? So run and gun is hasty, obviously, and doesn't allow for time for those relationships to develop, and you don't get the depth of portraiture that you really want. And so they take a lot of time. And as I said, they take a kind of approach to the work which is extremely ethical. Now, with social media and creating content for clicks, A, there's no time to develop those relationships, and B, there doesn't seem to be a lot of, concern for ethics. And I think that's why verite is still so precious.
A sort of almost example to illustrate this going wrong is you showed this to us in documentary video class. It was the I Am a Girl one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you showed it to us, and like we found out later that the girl that was documented in the documentary, I think her parents like beat her up or something, and like it was really bad. It was really bad.
No. No. What do we think? Oh, A Stranger in Her Own City.
Oh, sorry. Yes, A Stranger in Her Own City. I got the documentary wrong, but yeah, it's in there too. Yes.
Right. That's why I put it on the list, and I
Yeah.
even think I made a note. A Stranger in Her Own City is made in Yemen, and it's made by a woman who went to NYU, and I believe she made it while she was still at NYU. She was a young girl in Yemen, and she had traveled back to Yemen and saw a big change in, oh gosh, what is the name of the city? I just forgot. But the change that she noticed was that the women were all in full hijab, face covering, black. She was shocked by it. And so she wanted to know more. And so she went, and I think in a short amount of time, she identified a girl of 12 or 13 years of age who was sticking out because she was riding a bicycle, and she was not in hijab, and she was very outspoken too. And so they were like, oh, this is an interesting character. How can she be so free in a place like this? And so they followed her and they filmed her, and they even provoked encounters between her and men that were like sitting together in the streets and stuff. And to the girl's credit, I mean, she was extremely brave and she was very confident in herself. But as you said, that exposure, that spotlight on that girl got her in real trouble that she didn't see coming. And eventually, she would have been taken out of school. She would have been, forced to cover completely. She would not be riding a bicycle anymore. That was going to happen anyway. But unfortunately, because of the film itself and the lack of ethics of that documentary maker, not only was she instantly, pulled out of her girlhood of relative freedom, but as you say, she was beaten badly, and she suffered. And the filmmakers were long gone by then,
Yeah. And I looked up the filmmaker, and it looks like she had a pretty good career. She still has a pretty good career. So she didn't see any consequence from that. I mean, ethically from her mind, maybe she did, but like, physical, like financial, etc., no consequence.
No, she didn't. And she did go back to do a follow-up. And this is years later, it's online. And at this point, Khadijah, the girl in the film, she had something like 6 children. She was interviewed, but she wasn't allowed to show her face on camera. And so it was always like, she's turned away, or it's her back and it's voiceover. But she shares openly how she felt about the filming process. And so even though I condemn it, or at least am critical of it, she wasn't.
Wow.
She said that she was actually glad that her children could see how she used to be, and to maybe, understand why she cared so much about their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was kind of poignant to see that she really actually in the end thought that it was good, even though she was, punished pretty badly.
Yeah. Well, keep talking about this list, because the one also that sticks out to me here is you've recommended to me Five Broken Cameras, which I have saved up, but I haven't watched it yet.
Mhm.
Where is Five Broken Cameras in sort of the documentary style component?
Well, it's a true documentary, so I wouldn't call it documentary style. This was made in, I believe, 2003. Maybe don't quote me, but this was right at the beginning of the real acceleration of violence by Israelis against Palestinians and the taking of their land. I think we all understand that the conflict in Palestine is about land. It's not about religion, right? So an Israeli filmmaker and a Palestinian filmmaker worked together on Five Broken Cameras. That alone is interesting. This small village, Berlin, was right on the border of Israeli, a very large Israeli settlement, which is like a small town, a settlement. Um, and it was the site of peace activists coming, and Israeli and Palestinian, and brainstorming how to create conditions for peace in Palestine. Now, that's not actually featured in the film. There's one scene where you can see Israelis and Palestinians sitting together outdoors, like in a small group talking with one another, but it does not let us know that that was a site of such peacemaking efforts. That's how the Israeli filmmaker met the Palestinian filmmaker, who began filming without any intention of making like a film, the way that it became a real film. He wanted to get a home video camera for the birth of his fifth child, as people do, and he just wanted to film his baby. And so he got the camera, but at that very same time was this acceleration of violence in his village. And he just thought, well, I'm here. I'm going to just start filming what's happening. And then more and more, he was filming and really subjecting himself to danger. The reason why it's called Five Broken Cameras is because 5 cameras were broken in the process of making the film, 2 of them by being shot right out of his hands. One of those incidences sent him to the hospital with very serious injuries. So, but he was persistent, and he made what's considered to be one of the most powerful anti-war films ever made. And it's also really helpful for us today. We know what's happened in Palestine, the horrors, but to see how it started, because I know there's a lot of judgment against Hamas or the Palestinian people about, well, why are you so violent? If you weren't so violent, you wouldn't have had to be punished like this. You know what I mean? You'll see why they became violent. The boys that were witnessing their brothers, fathers, uncles, being imprisoned, taken away, shot, killed, right in front of them, they were radicalized, as young children. And of course, they grew up with a lot of anger, but it didn't come from nowhere. So you get to see the genesis of, what has happened. And I think it's still an incredibly important film, even though it's not recent. Explain what?
Yeah. It's interesting too, because now that I know what Five Broken Cameras is about, it makes sense why you also put The Earth is Blue as an Orange also with that, because that's also a war type of documentation, but The Earth is Blue as an Orange is more documenting the first incursion of Russia into Ukraine in the I don't even know what they call it now, because now it's a full-on war, but back then, in the like mid 2010s, Russia incurred into Ukraine too. So that's very interesting.
Have you seen that film?
I have not seen it, but I know what The Earth is Blue as an Orange is documenting.
Yes. They were this is a family, the only women left in the village. It's a mother with 5 children, no men, because they're all fighting or dead. And they're in Donbass, which is right on the border of Russia. So much so that a lot of the residents of Donbass speak Russian, not Ukrainian. But it's also considered to be one of the most powerful anti-war films because it doesn't actually show fighting. It doesn't show any like war. It just shows the effect on this family living in Donbass and trying to maintain their sanity, essentially. And they do it by making this home movie, which is a film within a film for Earth is Blue as an Orange. So a real cinematographer, a real filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker came from Kiev, and she lived with the family, and she made a very, very beautiful film because she's very, very skilled. But it's about the family making a film of their own. And the oldest girl applying to film school and getting in. And, you know, it's a very, very, very moving film that, you know, just shows us the human aspect of war, as does Five Broken Cameras.
Were there any documentaries on this list that you sent me? And to viewers watching, I can definitely put together this list. Ellen, if you're okay with me sharing this, I can put together a list with some other lists of movies that both Ellen and I have compiled. So if you guys want to see sort of the reading list, but like a watching list that Ellen and I've put together, I'll share with all of you guys. So my question for you, Ellen, is any documentaries on this list where you went into it with one expectation, you came out of it completely had different experience, different everything. You're like, man, why did I go into this with this expectation?
You ask such good questions, Jerry. There is a film on the list which is kind of a sleeper. Not many people will have heard of it. It's called Resurrect Dead: Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles. So it's made in Philadelphia. The whole making of it is another story that's kind of incredible and amazing, but a lot of Philadelphians had noticed that there were these very odd, like linoleum tiles that were carved, words were carved out of the tiles, and they were set in the asphalt of the streets. So that it just became one with the asphalt. And you could easily just step over them if you were trying to get to your destination, but there were quite a number of them. And I know for myself, I always wondered what they were because the words that were on them were cryptic. And it was like, what are these anyway? So the filmmaker decided to kind of do this mystery. That's why it's called Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles. Like, what are they? We're going to figure it out. We're going to solve the mystery. So my expectation going in was that they would solve the mystery. Because if they didn't, like, what film do you have? You know? And I don't mean to like ruin it for anybody, but they don't solve the mystery. And it's really interesting for me as a documentary maker because I know that they didn't know how this film was going to end, right? They just kept trying to figure it out. And then at a certain point, I think they realized, like, we are not going to figure this out. So now what? Did we waste all of our time? What are we going to do? And they made up an ending, which I don't know if everybody would know this, but I could tell that they made it up. And they made it up because they needed an ending. So that's an interesting film because it did not end like I expected.
It reminds me of a documentary you recommended to me when I was in your class that actually inspired me a lot to create my documentary that I did called Sherman's March, where it was the same thing. He went into kind of similar, right? He went into it. He was going to do a history documentary, and he just started documenting the girls from his past and why he failed at dating. Like, that was one of those, he didn't know where it was going to go and he didn't know how to end it. And he sort of ended it abruptly, but it worked. It's like, oh, I asked one of them out and they said yes. Right. It's like, so yeah, I think I will really enjoy, the Toynbee Tiles, Resurrect Dead. Then if that's sort of the approach, I'm going to really enjoy it.
A little fun fact, the maker was from West Philly. He lived in one of these, you know, if you remember, West Philadelphia has a lot of like large houses, and sometimes groups of people would live in the houses, and some of them didn't pay rent. They were like squat houses. He lived in one of those houses, and he made his living as a house cleaner. Okay. the whole time he was making this film. He shot the film, he edited the film, and he did the soundtrack. And he did it on as little amount of money as a house cleaner. At the time came for him to submit it to Sundance, okay? And it costs $50 to submit. And he's like down to his last like $60, okay? And he's thinking like, oh my God, like, should I spend $50 on submitting it? No, I'm delusional. I'm crazy. What am I doing? This is so stupid. Why do I even think this is a good film? They're never going to accept it. I'm wasting my money. Like, he's having this whole running argument in his head. And finally, he's like, okay, wait, just forget it. I'm just going to submit it, okay? I'll just submit it just to stop this argument in my head. I'll just do it. It won the audience award at Sundance. And it's just such a great story about just, I don't know, believing in yourself.
Yeah. Persistence slash an unfortunate almost norm in the artistic journey. You're like down to the very last before you get recognized. And then as you're telling me about that, I'm like, why does that happen to so many artists? But then you think, is that an essential rite of passage to become a true artist?
I don't know if it really ever stops, wondering if you've really done something that's okay or good. Yeah.
Do any of the students in your class, maybe they started out, they just want to take your class, but after your class, like they finish the class, they come up to you, they're like, I kind of want to make films on the side, or I kind of want to, study film on the side. Do you get any students like that? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I do. Not a lot, but I can think of like 3 students off the top of my head that have actually, gone into the profession.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's a testament to, why I brought Ellen on a second time, why we're talking about documentaries, films, why we're talking about just the process of how do you educate people on the beauty and the practicality of filmmaking.
No, some of it's not just technical or knowing examples of good films either. There's something so challenging about documentary that's not didactic, which is how to be present in the moment. Sounds like a simple thing, but it really isn't, and just to still your mind, and slow down your body too, so that you can shoot properly, but slow down your mind so that you're not elsewhere. You need to be in the moment, fully present, that takes practice and being open to what happens. If I have a preconceived idea, then that's what I'm going to be looking for, and I might miss something else that's important that I didn't think of, so really that is part of why we practice. And I think the other thing that is something that must be practiced is overcoming your own social norms. Like there's norms about who to talk to, how to approach people, how close to get to somebody, how long to look at them, like these are all social codes. And if you violate social codes, you're going to seem either offensive or weird, right? And then for some people, myself included, for sure, I had to overcome being shy, because to make documentaries in the world, you really have to show up, and you also have to physically put yourself into places that don't allow you to recede into the background. So just overcoming that. And so one of the ways that I was always encouraging my students, and I wasn't joking, pretend that you're someone else. Pretend that you're someone who doesn't care what people think of you, who doesn't care if you're doing something a little bit weird or offensive, who doesn't care if you're blocking someone else's view, pretend you're that person just for now, so that you can get the shots, because the important thing is to get the shot. And nobody's going to watch your documentary and say, oh, look how polite they are, I'm glad No, they're going to be like, wow, she really got the shot. So that's something to practice too.
That's such an important point, and it's something that I'm gonna take another example from acting class that actually ties in very well with what Ellen said. So part of how you can anyone can learn to act, right? There is a methodology, there is a way to learning how to act. And the Stanislavski method, and I think Adler, who was one of Stanislavski's students, the Adler method is also very big on this. A lot of character work. So,
Mhm.
okay, like how do you become the character? Become, right? That's subjective, but how do you act more in accordance, or maybe a better word is how do you react more in accordance to a character you're trying to portray? Well, you got to do a lot of character work. So
Mhm.
you have to imagine your circumstances, you have to set up your backstory. And
Mhm.
for example, so if I had to play a character who like didn't care about getting in people's way, what would I do? Well, first thing I would do is I would set a backstory. I would have to imagine what a character who didn't care, what his maybe family circumstances were, what he or she were doing right before this scene, right? All this character work gets you to be able to react the right way authentically. So
Mhm.
what Ellen's basically teaching people from an acting perspective is do some character work. So then when you like have to show up as the filmmaker that needs to get the shot, you show up as the filmmaker that needs to get the shot, and then you can like go home and continue being yourself again. It
Mhm.
is like you're basically explaining part of the Stanislavski and Adler method, but I don't know if you ever studied that, but like props to
I
you for
never
kind
put
of
that
explaining that
together.
to the student.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very interesting. Like so much of Adler and Stanislavski is character work, character work. Like, okay, like literally like Stanislavski methodology actors, I think go very deep. Okay, what was my character when he was 5? What was my character like when he was 12? What was my character like, let's say you're portraying someone 30. What's my character like in college? What was my character like his first job, right? You really dive into that. And I'm not saying as a filmmaker you do that, but that is how deep you can go. And that is how deep, if you feel like that's what you need to do, you might try going if you need to overcome certain things to be able to put on a persona, a role for what you need in that moment later on.
And eventually it'll become a comfortable coat that you just slip into,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Expanding on this is that, uh, again, big props to Ellen. Ellen gave me this great idea when I started that little documentary for my final project in her class that I ended up keep filming for the rest of the year. But she's like, Jerry, why don't you go and like interview people about this subject? And I was so scared. I was like, "Ah," like, but I did it. I
You
did
did.
it.
You did.
And years later, I would always do this. I don't do this anymore, and maybe it's something I should bring back again. But for years, I would just interview people on the street, and
Mhm.
it got to the point where I could see, like, oh, I could get myself into that mode easier and easier. It's not something that quote unquote comes natural to me. Like, who very few people, I think, maybe some like Gen Z growing up now, Gen Alpha, maybe they were born with the camera in their hand, but very few people can be like, oh, let me have an instrument in my hand. Let's stop someone and ask them some questions. Be like, oh, this might go online, right? Or this might go into
Mhm.
a film. Very few people can be comfortable with it naturally, but through years of practice, I could jump into that. I can immediately, oh, I'm not uncomfortable with this anymore. The moment I have the necessity to do it. So like Ellen says, you can wear that. Eventually it gets to that point. I love this conversation. I love this conversation. Do you have actually a better way to ask this question is at Thomas Jefferson where you're at now, do they have like a place where the students can check out a video camera and things like that?
Jefferson specializes in fashion, architecture, and then mostly medical, either pre-med or medical adjacent fields. So there is no video production department. There is a class, but it just started, and the person that they hired is coming out of sports broadcasting.
Um,
I don't think that's like, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't,
it's a different type of
that's different.
mentality.
It's different. So I don't know if you can check out a camera there. I'm not sure.
Mhm. Mhm. Maybe I'll write to Tom Sheffield and be like, "Hey, you want to start a video department? Me and Ellen. Maybe let's bring Christian. Me and Ellen and Christian. Let's do this."
I would love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other documentaries on this list that you want to highlight?
Let me check the list, okay? Oh, I wanted to ask you a question.
Mhm.
Jia Zhangke. First question, how do you pronounce his name?
贾 so 贾樟柯
Oh, okay.
yeah 贾樟柯
Jia Zhangke.
yeah
He's amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his films.
I do not think so, and I'm gonna put this on my list now because
Yeah. He's made both fiction and documentary films. And he's old enough that he's seen great, vast changes in China and has documented that transition. And, that's interesting in itself. But wow, his cinematography is so beautiful. And there's Jia, how is it? Jia
yeah 贾樟柯
Zhangke. Is it called a man from the name of his town? Anyway, it's like an autobiography. And if you want to know about him, that's the one to watch. I really liked an early film of his called The World. And I even showed an example of point A to point B that we were talking about before. His opening scene of The World, I don't know if I showed it in your class, but I know that I've shown it to students as an example of a character getting from A to B, because the opening scene is, the world is a theme park in China that the different areas of the theme park represent different parts of the world.
wow.
So like France will have the Eiffel Tower and different things, right? And they have performances in French or in German with the costumes, and the employees of the theme park all live there. And so they live in the world. And he makes a film about the world, and it's really cool. But the opening scene, it's one of the actresses, and she's moving through the dressing rooms, and it's this whole, I guess, complex of dressing rooms for all the different areas of the park. And it's a follow shot, and it's really long, and it's just beautiful. But the whole film is fascinating.
Okay, I gotta put this on my list. Like, I am so wanting to watch this film. I don't think you showed this to us, but if you did, maybe I forgot. Like, it feels like one of those movies that's so eclectic, but so relevant to China's kind of whole journey. Wow, this is
All of
I
his films are, yeah.
wow, I will have to watch this. Like, I
Uh-huh.
bet you, knowing how there's like 200 more video platforms in China, one of them will have it for free that I could watch. So,
Mm-hmm. I
wow.
got it, or all of his films off of the Criterion Channel, which is a
Mhm.
treasure trove of films. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that actually is a good last topic for us. If students wanted to up their film knowledge, I like your idea of like getting a subscription to the Criterion collection, right? That's a good one. What other ways can students just go watch stuff that's beyond just the content stuff that they usually watch?
Well, going to film festivals is great. The frustrating thing about film festivals is oftentimes, especially if they're international, um, the United States won't have licensing for the films. And so you'll see them at the festival, but then you can't find them online because we don't have licensing for them. I go every 2 years. I don't know if I'll continue to, but I have been going to Munich to a children's international festival, and it's the top prize in all the world for children's film and television. And I see incredible examples. I Am a Girl, that's on the list, is out of that
Oh,
festival, and it is online. I saw it there. It's a festival, but a lot of times I'll see beautiful, beautiful work. The reason why I go is because I think that the United States has criminally neglected our children when it comes to media. And so I go to see examples that are great because you can't see them here. So rarely, I should say. Um, so yeah, so I'll see them there and I'll be like, oh, I'd love to show these, to a class or something, but I can't because they're not streaming. So, and don't overlook reading, you know, like people don't really read a lot anymore, but good film theory can be very obtuse, like really opaque, really hard to get through, a lot of terminology. Sometimes it just seems like a lot of blowing smoke, for their own ego or whatever. But so it gets a bad rep. But, there's other kinds of writing too that's incredibly enlightening. I learned so much about editing from Maya Deren's writing. Maya Deren's not a documentary maker. Well, she did make an incredible documentary. She died making it down in Haiti. But she was an experimental filmmaker, and her writing about editing in particular is amazing. Mayderen.
Oh, okay. Deren.
Yeah.
Maya Deren.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, she's Russian. Dude, some of the Russian stuff, like, oh, wow.
Well,
like,
Tchaikovsky,
yeah.
his writing, is amazing. And the early Russians, the originators of editing, their writing is amazing. So I guess I'm talking about writing by filmmakers, not theorists, because that can, I don't know. But when I read filmmakers, I just think it's a great way to really dive deep.
I like that idea. I should get on that immediately. Like, I remember back in the day, shout out Paul Massaris, he had us read a book by one of these directors, Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet, right?
Oh, yeah. How Movies Work. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's the one. And I remember reading that. Like,
that's a great book.
That is a great book. Yes. So, yes, I agree with what Ellen says. Like, read the writings of people that have, like, made stuff.
Mhm.
So, because like she said, you can read the theorists, you can read the critics, and there is some value to it. But for people that want to make stuff, read the stuff by people that make stuff.
Yes, because there's a lot of thought that goes into it, Yeah. So I would recommend. Another thing on that list, the top thing on the list is called Camera Person by Kristen Johnson. She's a camera person, and she shot all over the world, documentary work. And that, if you want to see like how a filmmaker thinks and behind the scenes, she has a lot of examples, and then she'll put the voiceover, her own voiceover, about what she was thinking at the time and stuff. That's very, very interesting.
So we can add any documentaries about the filmmaking process is something that'll really kind of, get you. It's funny because before I took your class, when I was a freshman, I took an ethnomusicology class, and it was the first time we watched a documentary about the process of music making.
Okay.
And we watched the documentary about how Paul Simon made Graceland. And so, like, he's in there talking about, there's this famous bass line in one of the songs where he had to, like, use a audio editor because you can't actually do it on the bass. So he had to, like, so, like, these are enlightening things. So then it's like, when you watch that, you're like, oh, so then I can use these tools to kind of, like, edit my sound, right? Like, you can learn a lot from watching a music person do the music. So you can also learn a lot from watching a film person talking about the filmmaking process. It looks like Camera Person would be a great one for anyone looking to get started. But I really want to emphasize what Ellen said. Reading. That reading portion is so important.
Reading. Yeah. Still believe in reading.
Yeah. There was a channel, and I would consider this like it's like a content channel, but it's a content channel created by a person. I think he had once worked in Hollywood, or maybe he had studied film at NYU or something like that. But he talked very deeply in depth about editing and cinematography. It's called Every Frame a Painting.
Oh, I've read that.
Yeah.
And it's a blog. It's
yes, he I think has a blog too, or something like that.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah. So, like, that's another example, because that person, I know he's done it. So, like, when he's analyzing,
you're making a great point. Video essays are a great way of sharing thinking about film, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a press play series. I mean, there's a few, but that is an excellent route. Yeah.
And personally, the channel that I showed Ellen that I started like doing my own kind of video essays, that's probably the direction I'm going to keep going. Is,
Yes.
you know, I want to think about it from multiple perspectives. Now, obviously, I studied a lot of stuff all these years, so my channel probably won't just be about filmmaking, but there will be times where I want to talk about the editing, and I have talked about the editing in some places. So, by the way, Ellen will definitely be featured on that channel too. So that's like a teaser for everyone. Ellen will not just be on this channel. Ellen will be on that channel too. So,
Cool.
Are there any topics you want to talk about, Ellen, while we have you?
Oh gosh, maybe next time.
Yes, I think continuing the conversation next time, we're going to have a whole series of these conversations, because every time, like, you need to give things time to grow, right? And the beauty of this conversation is Ellen got me back into wanting to watch beautiful documentaries again. I had thought video essays could just like almost like take their place, but I was wrong, because I have not seen a video essay portray something like Streetwise did to a section of society that we try to push under the rug. So, wow.
Yeah.
So, everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions for Ellen, make sure to leave
Streetwise
it.
is on YouTube too, right? Is that where you found it?
It was on YouTube. That's how I found it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Because I was looking through the list, and all of them were behind paywalls or something. And one of them was on Tubi, but I was like, I'm not in the mood for that one. And then I saw Streetwise, and whether I was in the mood or not, it caught me immediately. That's the power of film. That's the power of a really well done documentary. I was like, I know this is probably going to go dark places, but it caught me. I was captivated. I'm like, let me take this journey, even if it's going to ruin my mood for the rest of the night. That's a good film right there.
It is.
Ellen, actually, while we have you, or maybe we'll wait next time, we should do a journey talking about all the documentaries you've done, and even projects that are, let's say, you're still editing. Maybe that's a talk for the next time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Because when I was at Penn, Ellen showed me clips of like a dance one she did, and then she also talked about in Atlantic City one she was doing. So we could talk through your kind of all the projects you've done. And yeah, so I think that would be a great conversation for next time.
Okay. I'll look forward to that, Jerry.
Definitely. So everyone watching, I will stop recording now, and then you guys just leave your comments and stay tuned for the next one.
Bye.